The views and opinions expressed during Love and Life with Lana and Dave are those only of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or the position of our podcast hosts or affiliates. Any content provided is not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, anyone, or anything. All right, let's do it.
You're listening to Love and Life with Lana and Dave, the podcast where logic is power and you take control. Thank you for tuning in, making the choice to listen in and get ideas for your own love and life. Now, here are your hosts, Lana Williams and David Vaccaro. I'm Dave.
Hey, how you doing? Oh, you're Dave.
I am Dave.
That's Dave, and I am Lana.
Yes, she is. Good. How are you today?
You have always been Dave.
How are you this week?
I'm doing good.
So I'm going to tell you why I'm laughing at it. I'm telling.
This is a fantastic week.
It is. It is a good week, and we have a fun episode.
Throw me under the bus
this week. I was going to say we're having a discussion on whether we should say today's episode or this week's episode, and Lena's right. I say today all the time, and we should say this week. So from now on, it's this week. And if I don't, you'll hear Lena yell at me and say this week. If I say today, she'll go this week, and I'll go, yeah, that's right, this week. So yeah. So today we have, are you shitting me?
Exactly.
This week we have, I said it already after just explaining how I'm not going to say it. See what's it's habits. It must be from my childhood. I must like the word today better than this week.
Yeah.
So yeah, this week's episode is going to be fun.
We are very habitual creatures.
We are. But I think if I say it, 9 times? Mm-hmm. If I get it right 9 times, I'll never do it again. Is that what it is? 9 times. This
maybe
I'm gonna
I
look
heard
it up.
that you do anything for 30 days, it changes. So
30 days.
I guess 9 times in 30 days. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can all be dead in 30 days, but it supposedly works. I don't know. I'm just saying that's what I heard.
And so this week's episode,
we have a little bit of a delay talking to each other here.
Oh, we do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
Go ahead.
Oh boy. So we may be talking over each other a little bit.
It feels like I'm stepping on you a little bit. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Wow.
We'll work on it.
So sometimes we have internet struggles. I mean, I'm in the middle of the woods, and Lena is in Rhode Island. And, we're actually not sitting next to each other. However, we are looking at each other, so that makes it fabulous. You guys are jealous because we're looking at each other, and you can't see us.
Yep. And we make sure we can look at each other so that it feels a little more real, right? Even though we can't really, we're not in the same studio, but we do what we can. That's
right. And I mean, we should definitely get together soon and do some episodes in an actual studio or something so we can be there together and nobody will talk over each other. Hopefully this internet will catch up and fix itself and then, it'll be better. But anyway, so today,
today you're doing it again?
This week's episode, we're actually going to have a fun one here today.
Yes.
It's going to be fun today,
fun and
right?
Informative.
It is going to be informative as well. We're going to talk about how to meet people, like in a social setting. Like, how do you meet people and what do they think? And we're going to do something really cool where Lena is going to explain how she would approach somebody, a guy, in possible dating scenario or somebody she's interested in, and I'm going to respond with how I would take that and how I would feel, and then we're going to do a reverse, and I'm going to talk about how I would approach a woman, and Lena is going to tell me whether or not it would be a way that she would want to be approached. So stay tuned and listen to the whole thing because we may. This could be a long episode, but we're not going to. We're gonna keep it to a minimum today. We know what time it is.
Well, why don't we see what happens? Let's try to keep it to, let's try to make it nice and concise. But it's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of information here. And it's kind of, I think, personally important information just because we're living in a time where a lot of the old ways of social interaction are really struggling. There's people who are, I've heard from, I would say all kinds of people that it's not fun right now to try to socially interact with someone else.
It's not the same. Yeah, things have changed.
And so, you're starting with, I would say probably previous to, social media has really degraded a lot of in-person interaction. As far as, hey, there's somebody over there on the other side of the room. Let me just walk up to him and say, hey, how you doing? And when Dave and I were younger, this was like, I mean, we didn't have any other way. This is what we did. There really wasn't any alternative.
Right. You spoke to the person. People say text me now or snap me or whatever.
Let me start with this. I'm gonna do a little bit of the arc of social interaction and the arc of the era that we live in, and say that. And Dave and I have had this conversation 140,000 times. And I think that number's accurate. But anyway,
I think it might be. Yeah.
But when we were younger, I would say when Dave and I were younger, we'll go back to like the 60s, because that's in the 70s, because that's really all we know. Neighborhoods were smaller, regions were smaller, and social circles were smaller, meaning you didn't really see people outside of your neighborhood or your town, maybe your town or the town over. Right. But a lot of people you knew or in your social circle every day were people that really you went to school with, your family knew. You had friends of friends, but like maybe you went to this local place and you got ice cream, or you went to this local place and you went roller skating, but most of that stuff was enclosed within your town. And so I wasn't alive in the early 60s, but I mean, really, that was how people met. There was this little teeny social circle around them that they worked from. And so when they got introduced to somebody, it was always through somebody they knew, or it was always like some social gathering, that a dance at school or something like that, where everybody kind of knew each other. And there might have been one or two people from another town, but it was like they were with somebody that you knew. And there was very rarely a stranger coming through that environment, right? So let me start with that, because when people say, well, why can't we do this like we used to do it anymore? A lot of our social experiences become really expanded in the sense that you're not really meeting people anymore daily that mutual friends with or family. It's not really happening that way anymore.
And so I'd like to add something to that, because I was raised in a lake community. And we live there all year long. And so just to give you an idea of how different it is today, so people would come just for the summertime, that lived there in the summertime. And I had a lot of friends in the summertime, but over the winter they went home. And they only lived maybe 50 miles away, right? So they may live in, let's say, the western part of Mass, and then they would come to the town where I grew up, Middleborough. And I lived on a place called Woods Pond, with my grandparents lived there anyway, and I was there all the time. And in the summertime, they would be there. And so I had all these friends. And then, some of my friends stayed as well. They lived there too. But a lot of them, most of them left and went home. And guess what? They were not my friends over the winter because we couldn't make long-distance phone calls. We were very limited to really getting together with anybody outside of our social area. And so, like Lana, like you're saying, social times have totally changed, because now you can meet somebody, they're in a whole different state, and people are traveling to go meet people. It's a whole different world out there. So where we had very limited resources, let's call them resources, to make friends, we were really good at it, and we maintain that friendship. Now,
I'm going to add this, though. Even though it was regional and even though it was local and it was limited, it was also extremely familiar.
Yes.
So you didn't have a sense of, I would say, for the most part, obviously there was an exception to everything. So even as a kid, I was put in some danger. There were people that came through that were dangerous for others. It didn't mean we were safe every minute. Right. But we had a whole lot more of an understanding of the people that we were running into.
Of course.
We had a history on who we were talking to.
Yep.
So when we went out on dates back in high school or in our 20s, at least, until, for me, my towns opened up as I started to drive, obviously, but it really wasn't still that far outside the state. But some towns got added to the outside of my circle. But before then, if I dated somebody, I already knew of them.
Everybody you knew them. And it was never a stranger. We didn't date strangers back then.
That's tied to accountability, right? So if you dated somebody and they were completely terrible to you, it was going to get around. Somebody was going to find out about it. That's a big deal, because accountability was, I don't know if it was something that people were trying to do on purpose or not, but it was just part of the social thing. So your family knew of this person, and if they did something and you came back to your family and said, well, I went out with this guy and he dropped me off somewhere and left me, or whatever it is,
Yeah, now
That
the
would get
whole
around.
area knows, of course.
Every girl this guy was going to
Yeah.
date would find out. His family would find out. His mom and dad would find out.
Yep.
All of that. So every day he would have to face.
Yes.
So somebody can't just do something to you and just be like, "Oh, okay," and get away with it, and nobody they know
move
finds out
to a
about
different town or go to a different,
Right.
a different dating site or whatever it is, right? Because you're right. Because I went to high school, and obviously I went to high school, but in high school, there was this couple that was dating, and the guy hit his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me tell you, that kid became an outcast. Accountability is right, because everybody that knew him knew the story, and that was the end of nobody would date him at all, right? So today, in that same scenario, you've got this girl that dates this guy from 4 towns away, and he hits her. She's going to post it on Facebook. Nobody gives a shit, right? Nobody cares.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's totally possible that
he doesn't even have to be
somebody could do
accountable.
something to you and it would not affect their social situation at all.
Correct. It won't.
Unfortunately, that's where we live right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the nature of socializing today is, and I understand that there are people who are frustrated by the fact that somebody may want a little more information from you than they would have wanted years ago.
Right.
But what I want to tell people about this is that this is because we came from a time where we didn't have to get that information. That information
was there.
It was an availability that we took advantage of, and we took for granted. We didn't even realize it would ever go away, probably at that time. But now when you meet somebody, you really don't know who you're dealing with. You just don't know who you're dealing with. So I'm just saying that when somebody says, hey, walking across a room and talking to me, that's different than it was in the 70s. That's different than it was in the 80s. Somebody walking across the room and talking to you in the 80s is probably somebody you already know of or know by sight, or
or
maybe
they're
they
a friend
go
of
to
a
school
friend
across town, but they're still somebody that you've heard of. And
they already have a social connection somehow.
Right.
This
isn't happening anymore. So I just want to say that now, because before we get into this whole thing, because there are people who are really frustrated with, God, I go out and I try to talk to people and it's like, they don't want anything to do with me. And they think I'm this person or that person. And unfortunately, there are people out there that have dealt with a lot of people that are not good for them.
Right.
And I'm sorry, but you're going to get cast into a group of people that are going to have to maybe prove who they are a little bit before somebody trusts them.
Of course.
And I don't know how they're going to have to deal with it somehow, because we're not dealing with a familiar society anymore. Everything is really strangers, virtually.
And as a guy, like, I can tell you that there are many, many women out there that are raised on social media, and that's where their social knowledge is social media. And guys are sending them dick pics and stuff, and they assume that all guys, at some point, they start thinking all guys are the same, and we're all like that.
Right.
And it makes it very difficult for men to approach a woman, and even in public today. Because think about it. Would I ever walk up to a woman in a bar and whip out my junk and be like, here it is? No guy would do that. But we were talking about this earlier. This kind of like a modern day flasher, right? So
it is.
It did exist, but I think a lot more people are doing it today in hopes that they get.
I think a lot less people could do it then, but I don't think that the number of people that would want to do it has changed. I think that the opportunity is a little more available now than it was. And I think some guys
it is because they don't
today,
arrest people for it today.
Exactly. So
you
that's part of it.
Yeah.
And now, so we'll take all of that and the arc of the things that have changed since the 90s, and, when we go into the 2000s and 2010s and the internet comes along, and what would have started as things like, we're going to go way back and talk about stuff like ICQ and AIM and things like that. But those are this is where all of that started.
Sure.
Earthlink and things like that. I mean, email was really the beginning of that kind of stuff. And then as time went on, we had MySpace, and, really we thought MySpace was going to be it. But then, of course, Facebook came along and ellipsed that. And so all of these different things that we're learning, right now TikTok's the big thing. Something will come along and take TikTok off its rocker, because this is the way it goes. And it's starting to happen really fast. So there'll be another app that comes along. There are also dating sites out there, but people have to, to some degree, people are going to be a little bit more leery of others just because they don't have a history. They don't have any information. They don't have mutual friends. That's happening. Then you got the Me Too movement, which happened. And I don't have any problem with the Me Too movement happening. However, I understand that there's some backlash, or there's some repercussion to the Me Too movement, in the sense that there are men who are not as easily accepted by women who they're trying to talk to in public because of the Me Too movement, and
Absolutely.
that's fine.
And
We got to
men-
navigate this.
And men are very afraid of it.
They are.
Too.
Yes. Some are afraid.
Yes.
Some are afraid to approach, and some are afraid of how they're going to be taken. And okay, and we're living in a society where I can understand. I can understand that being a fear, and I can also understand that being legit. I mean, there are legit reasons why that might be in place. So, that's fine. And then from there, we had a pandemic for 2.5 years. So right outside the Me Too movement and that all happening, we went into a 2.5 year pandemic, which I believe isolated a lot of people and changed social structure and changed people's ability to interact a lot. People were isolated and online a lot.
I even see it in business social. So as all you probably know, I'm a businessman, so I go to a lot of meetings, and there are many people that do not shake hands now. And to me, that was you walked around the room, you shook everybody's hand. It was, you just did. And now it's like, you don't know. You kind of go in and go, well, do I go in with a handshake? And, I don't want to offend anybody. Things have changed so much. It's just like, and I'm not a big fan of walking on eggshells. I will tell you that right now. I'm not a fan of that. And it's unfortunate because I feel like I'm being forced to. So in a social situation, I feel like I got to be very, very careful on how I approach everybody, because everybody is so different. And you do have these, like, I don't want to, I would hate to approach a woman that's like a Me Too movement type of person that's like way overly, because some of these things get really well overblown, and you take a good thing and it always gets turned into
there's always an
thing.
Extreme fringe for everything that
course.
happens.
Yes.
And so, yes, there are people who may take things to be a little bit, and I'm in both directions, maybe a little bit over the top with their response to the social environment we live in. That's always going to happen.
Yes.
I think it's unfortunate because it's counterproductive to the society when that happens.
Right.
But that's another story. So you have all of that going on. Yeah, you have people that are like, I don't really want to touch other people. I'll be honest with you. I personally am not a toucher. I'm not a hugger. And there's
were like that long before the pandemic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, the pandemic was beautiful, and obviously I don't, and I don't mean that it was a good thing that happened, because it wasn't.
Right.
But I'm saying there were some side effects of the pandemic that I found
wonderful
to be okay
that
for me.
Sure.
And one of those things is somebody just not coming out and throwing themselves on top of you and hugging you. That was something I never liked.
Right.
So now there's a little bit of a hesitation where somebody might at least ask you, hey, do you like this? Before they go in and do it.
Right.
Especially right now, we're still really not out of the pandemic 100%. So there's still a little bit of,
right, of course.
It's not like it was 2 years ago. But
I honestly don't think we will ever be 100% out of it. I don't.
I don't think we will either.
I'm not talking about COVID in itself. I'm talking about the way society has become. I think people are
changed.
afraid still. There are people out there that are afraid. And eventually, but it's hung on quite a while. I mean, I've never seen anything in my life that stayed so prevalent for so long.
Right. I mean, it is, there is an introverted society. I won't even get into this. Someday I'll get into a whole podcast about introversion and my team, my group, my squad, and how we feel about, yes, being approached in public, or yes, an extrovert society that we technically have been living in for a long time. And there are some things about that society that are frustrating for us. And so the pandemic kind of evened the playing field for us on a lot of those things.
It did.
But anyway, most of us are not. There are people who are shy and who would like to be able to interact more, but then there are also people who aren't shy and just choose not to. And that distinguishment, there was a distinguishing factor in both of those things, that they were lumped in together until the pandemic.
Right.
In which case, now it's like, oh, are you over there because you want to be on your own over there, or do you actually want to be included? That little question went in the middle, which we appreciate greatly.
Right.
That we do not want to be forced into social interaction with a group of people, because they think we want to be, and they don't want to talk to us about whether or not we actually do. So that's another thing. Anyway.
Right.
We're not going to go with that, but we're going to stay with the difference in how things happen. And now for me, I believe, and this is previous to the pandemic that I've been preaching this, and Dave will tell you, I don't think that there's any point in women, or not any point, maybe point's not the right word. I don't believe it's always productive for women to sit back and wait.
Right.
And we're living in a society right now where sitting back and waiting is going to get you
Nothing.
bupkis. You are going to have a
Right.
hard time as a woman if you sit back and wait. Also, there are several groups that I am in on Facebook, in several places that I'm looking in, where I am noticing that there is an extremely rusty, if not complete non-existent idea of how to socially interact. And I'm saying this is coming from men, and I'm not saying that men are the ones that are wrong. I'm just saying because I'm seeing it from my side, that they're actually having a hard time.
Well. I see it too.
They're just to start off a conversation or just to approach somebody. They have no idea what to do.
Yeah, they're a mess.
So that's fine.
We're gonna help
I'm
them
not
with
saying
that
it's fine.
today.
It's fine, meaning I'm not going to judge people on that. I understand after everything we've been through the past 5 years, it's probably socially related. It's probably in the context of what we've just been through,
Right.
but it's got to improve. Somebody has to. There's an olive branch that somebody's got to learn to extend somewhere here,
Right.
Or else we're going to. As far as there are people who are isolated and would like to be more social, and they are not having. They're having a hard time understanding how to begin.
Yeah, and let's just
process.
make something very clear. Just because you have 9 million friends on Facebook does not mean you have 9 million friends. These are people that
Right.
you find it easy to talk to on social media.
Right.
Social media is not, and I don't care when the situation is. I hear a dog shaking his ears. I want to punch him.
my dog.
I love him to death.
He wants to punch my dog.
I
Now
love
for
to.
Dave,
I
that
love
means
to. Yeah, that means
that's an affectionate thing.
It
If
is
you don't know
affection.
Dave,
Right.
a bunch of people that like dogs you just pissed a bunch of people off.
Yeah,
that like
no,
dogs
I
because
would
they
never.
don't know you.
Yeah. So
Dave does not
you
mean
know,
that.
Did you ever see something so cute you just want to squeeze it until its head pops? Yeah, I'm that guy.
Yeah.
So
He
yeah,
would
I
never
won't
do it,
really,
but he
I would
says
really
stuff
never.
like this.
I would definitely squeeze his nose and like smooch him in his mouth. But yeah, that's just.
I'll
she's
have to
gotta-
put up a picture of Dave with my dog when my dog was like 8 weeks old.
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
yeah.
He's now 150 times bigger.
Oh yeah, he is.
than he
He's
was.
huge. He's
Right.
still just as cute as he was when he was a puppy.
He still does. He actually really still does his baby face 3 years later.
yeah,
But
he does. Yeah,
But yeah, so not to get off track, even though Dave and I do that a lot.
yeah, we do.
So I believe for women, and I always will say I believe because I can't speak for everybody and I don't know what everybody's deal is. For me as a woman, it has always been easier for me to make the first move. And there's a lot of reasons why that is. One of them is that typically because of who I am as a person, guys who approach me are just almost defaultedly not going to be my type.
Right.
By default, they're not my type because, I attract a lot of the wrong type of guy because of my personality.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that are going to approach me are going to have to get past my face and my attitude. They have to disregard all of that. And if they're the types that do, they're to me, bottom line, they're just basically going to not be for me because of that. There's nothing wrong with guys that want to approach me. But may the odds ever be in their favor. But you almost have to have a challenge dynamic to your attitude.
Mm-hmm.
You almost have to want to try to sell me something. I'm just not your average person to approach where it's going to be an easy task for you. And so most of the guys that do like me will usually kind of get a look at me and be like, I don't really know if I should do that or not. And then the ones that go, yeah, I'm all about that.
I can see where you would be an intimidating face across the room. Because you seem
and I will
very,
say they are intimidated because, of course, I never aim to intimidate, but they may feel that way based on
I
what
think
they're
they would
seeing.
feel like that, and I'm speaking from a man's point. If I didn't know you, and I saw you sitting in a room, and a lot of men get intimidated by a woman who seems comfortable in her spot, but it's her spot. And I think that's important to recognize. And when we get more involved in this conversation this week, today, right now, this week, yeah. So I think when we get more into this conversation, we're gonna speak more on like what you see when
environment,
the environment, and recognize that environment. I think that it's very important for us to look at the environment before we approach somebody, and we're gonna. I think we can start getting into different ways to approach.
We are. But what I want to say is, I'm the type of person who can walk into a room, and I don't want to say own the room because I don't think I'm the best thing that ever is, but I don't ever walk into a room in a timid way. I just don't.
Right.
There are ways around that for me. If I feel like I'm in an environment where I'm not sure what's going on, I'll get into the environment before you do so I can feel it out and all that. There are things I do to make sure that I'm comfortable. I have to be comfortable in my environment, and that's just the way I feel.
Right.
Because of being a DJ for years, I've had to travel around and sort of just like scope rooms out and figure out environment as far as whether there's, what kind of a crowd flow they have, what kind of a bartender they have, what kind of DJ they have, what kind of audio acoustics are in place, whatever. I've had to go into other places to try to find out why they're doing better than my club. I got to go in there and find out, like, are they playing music I'm not playing, or whatever the case may be. I've gone into a lot of social environments by myself. Sit at the bar, just watch what's going on. I have no problem walking to any place that's public and sitting around by myself and checking things out. It doesn't faze me. It just
guys. It's there's a reason for that. Like, if you're looking to meet a woman and that's your goal, if that's why you're there, you're making a mistake, number one. But number two, if you go into a bar that is it's a gay bar for women and there's a bunch of lesbians in there, you're in the wrong spot. Know your environment too. If you see a bunch of women together, chances are pretty good they're doing a women's night. You're not invited. And there's now. Let's back up for a minute too. Are they approachable? Yes, they actually are. And if you do it in the right way. And I actually have really good luck with talking to people, and everybody's like, you can talk to anybody, and they accept it. And I'm going to explain to the guys why I have a good way of approaching people, and why my approach works. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Yeah.
So I'm just going to get into some statistics really quick and say that as women, there is a group of men that come at us, and I'm going to start throwing out some. These are general statistics. Obviously, there's no actual study on this. This is just my own personal experience, and then what I've seen from being in a million social environments.
Right. And that's statistics for you.
Right. But I don't actually have numbers where I've done surveys and gotten back. I mean, so I'm skewing my numbers based on what I think I see. But for the most part, as a woman, I always apply the 80-20 rule to everything. So 80%, if you're sitting back as a woman and men are coming to you, you're going to take the number, the 80% of them are going to be men that you're really not interested in. 20% going to be the numbers that are. Then you're going to go from there and skew it down to, out of these 20% that you do like that are approaching you, what other characteristics do they have? Are they available? Are they single? Are they responsible? There's all these other things. Once you and another person decide that you have mutual interest, you have to go from there and say, okay, what other qualities and characteristics do we have in common? This is dating. This is what it is, right? So you start with having no knowledge whatsoever and then going from there. If you approach men, you up your numbers. This is obvious. And the 80-20 flips. And if you approach men, you will probably find that 80% of the men you approach, will not be interested in you. I mean, those are odds that a large percentage are going to be one-sided or no-sided.
Right.
So if you approach men, you're going to get a maybe 20% chance that they'll be interested back. But that also ups your numbers. So if you do both of those things, you actually get a larger pool to shoot from.
Right, and it makes sense.
Right. And again, I'm talking statistics here. If any of this sounds cold or clinical, I apologize, but
it makes sense because you're talking about you're approaching people. So if you're approaching somebody, chances are pretty good it's somebody that you find interesting. So you're already on the right path.
Well, it's somebody you're interested in. So that side's already taken care
that's
of.
done.
You're looking at the other side.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'm going to say something really quick because I have a lot of friends that are women, and I know a lot of women that have said to me, I can't approach a guy because he's going to think I want to sleep with him. And my response to that is, that's their problem. If that's what they think, that's their problem. The other person can think whatever they want of you. It's really going to be a matter of what you actually do or what actually happens. If it doesn't happen, they're going to have to adjust their thinking. So if they think you're easy, and again, I'm going to go into this. This is going to sound really clinical and non-feeling and cold, but I need to get my information across.
It's logic.
If somebody, we're doing logic here. That's so if if you're interested in somebody and they think you're easy because you approach them and you don't sleep with them, they're going to have to change that thought. Again,
Correct.
you're not going to know what they think, and who cares what they think. And there are some women that will say that because they're really just looking to not do it. That's another story. But at the end of the day, you're going to be who you choose to be. Now, if you say that you're afraid that he's going to think you're easy because you happen to have, an inability to stop somebody you're attracted to from getting what they want from you, that's something you need to work on.
Right. That's different.
So we'll stop there. But anyway, we'll go back to the stats of you got 100%, and you want to take your 100%, and you've got now your 20% of men who approach you that you like, and your 20% of men that you approach that like you. Now that's your 40%. 60% is either going to be people that, they're going to be double, you're not interested, they're not interested, one of the other parties not interested, or both. But now you've got 40% to work with. And then you can take that 40% and go on. Now, when a man approaches you, you're the one who's saying yes or no to the approach.
Correct.
So that means that, and again, there are women who will say to me, if a man approaches you, that means that he's interested. I want to know that a man's interested. Well, good for you, but shouldn't he know that you're interested? Mm-hmm. Is it fair for you to say, well, I don't want to approach a man because I want him to know, I want to know that he's interested? It's a one-sided thing. To me, I don't believe in traditional norms, so I don't know why there's any reason why he can't know that you're interested as well. And I believe that a man will pursue a woman that he knows is going to actually be interested back.
Right.
So a little side note on persistence. I don't agree with persistence. I don't believe in it. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I understand that years ago, maybe it had some kind of a place in society where you were trying to find somebody that was.
Yeah, the whole hard to get thing used to be a thing. Yeah. Right. And
I know it.
It's not for me.
It served its purpose. Yeah, it's not for me
either. If somebody's playing hard to get, I'm like, okay, so you're not interested. I get your message, and I leave you alone. Right. Especially when we bring in the Me Too movement and stuff. Look, I don't want to be accused of harassing somebody. Right. And to me, if I approach you and you act like you're not interested, I will take that message and I will say, understood. And that will be the end of it. And if you say, well, if you really like me, well, nope.
Logic.
I don't know you.
Logic would state that as a woman, and we want to live in a time, I would think we want to live in a time where people mean what they say and say what they mean.
Right.
So I know a lot of women are going to be pissed off by me saying this, but if somebody approaches you and you're interested and you say no to them, then they should take that as a no and walk away. And if you lose out, that's on you.
Correct.
And that's the end of that.
And because more people will walk away when they hear a no now, because no means no. And there's a Me Too movement that has us believing that completely, that if you're not interested and I pursue that, I'm now harassing you. So
and to be honest with you, that's the truth. Way before the Me Too movement came along, as far as I'm concerned, that was harassment.
Right.
I never understood why some of the girls around me did not think it was. I was always aggravated by that.
Well, so how am I supposed to know if you're a Me Too movement person and if persistence could go really bad for me, or you are playing hard to get? How do I know? I do not, and I'm not taking a chance. There's that.
Nor should a guy take a chance on that.
Correct.
So, as far as I'm concerned, the whole thing where you say no and you mean yes, all that stuff that's all. I've never understood that stuff. I've never been the one to play games or to understand. I don't do double speak. I don't do passive aggressive language. None of that makes sense to me. I don't. You either like somebody or you don't, and you either tell them that you like them back or you don't. I mean, it's just, to me, that's it.
Right.
So when I've been out in clubs and somebody's come up to me and say, "How you doing?" Blah blah blah, and I say, "Listen, I'm all set," and they start, "Well, what do you mean?" And I really don't.
They want to know why, right? Or they get mad and
they want to know
that.
why.
Like,
they get mad. They'll tell me, "Well, hey, you're out in a nightclub. You should expect to be approachable." You know what? I just got done telling you I'm all set.
Yeah, I did.
I'm not
telling
you that I'm going to go out to dinner with you and then find out that I'm interested in you. I'm telling you right now, I'm saving you $200. I'm not interested.
Right.
And I'm pretty clear. Dave will tell you, I'm pretty blunt. I have had guys been more interested in me because I was so blunt because they're not used to it.
Right.
Which is
and
really weird. It's a really confusing message.
Well, there are some people that still love that hard to get thing, right? If I can't have it, I want it even more type of situation, which
maybe.
I've really never been.
But yeah,
that
I get
person.
mad at for all of the women out there that have condoned and have inflated and have carried persistence through all this time. You guys, it's your fault. When a guy comes up to me and I say that, I'm all set. I'm done. To me, no is not a negotiation.
Right.
It is a complete sentence. It doesn't matter why I'm not interested in you. I don't have to explain to you why I'm not interested in you.
Nobody owes you anything.
I'm forceful about it because I've as a kid who's been through, I've seen a lot of it go the wrong way if you're not completely forceful about it. And hey, listen, and I don't tell people I'm involved with someone else. I tell you, look, I'm single, but I'm just not interested.
Right.
That's your problem.
Right.
If it bothers you, it hurts you. Obviously, we are in a position as women where that can be dangerous. We have to be careful about stuff like that. And I have had that more than once backfire on me, so I know. But there should be no reason why there should be any kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, but after the conversation is over, it's over. Right. And there should be no reason why it be dragged out. Now, this happens online as well, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But anyway, so let's go back to women approaching men. I'm going to give you the steps, and I'm going to break it down. Again, when you walk into a nightclub, I'd say out of 100 men, as a woman, if you're a hetero woman, obviously, out of 100 men, maybe 15% of those men are working the entire room. The other 85% are generally sitting, and again, these are numbers I'm just throwing out. I always do this. For people that know me really well, they know. I'd say 50 to 20% of the men are really the ones that know how to talk to women. They know how to work the room. So when you go to a nightclub and you say, well, I don't really want to meet a guy in a nightclub because, they get around, blah, blah, blah. Well, the ones that get around are the ones you're seeing.
Right.
But there are 85% of the men that go out and they don't really work the room. Some of those guys are guys that want to be there because they like the place. Some of those guys are there and they're just not socially, they're not socially fluent so that they can't really kind of walk around and talk, and maybe they're a little shy or a little self-conscious. Mm-hmm. I personally love self-conscious guys. These are my type. Guys that are like, they're interested, but they're not sure if they should talk to you. Those are right up my alley. And I have to seek those guys out because they're not talking to me. I guarantee it. They're not going to come talk to me. Yep. They have to break my flow, or they have to break my stride to talk to me, and a lot of them don't want to do that because they probably already seen me stop some guy that tried to talk to me and say, what can I do for you? So they already know that they got to bring the game if they come talk to me. That's okay. So I've got to make it easier on those guys. That's my life. But 15% of those guys are really going to be the ones that are talking to all the women. Because of the fact that those men are so easily fluent in talking to women, they're going to work their numbers, right? So they have the opportunity to say, well, I like this woman in front of me is really nice, but who else can I talk to? Because of the fact that they can do it, they're going to do it.
That's right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And as a woman, I believe it would be nice if women were a little more fluent as well with that. Some of them are, and maybe not in the right way, but they are. But anyway, you want the 85%. To me, you want to tap the 85%. That's what, in any social environment, as a woman, you want to recognize and tap that 85. Because those are the guys, I don't care where you go. If you go to a bar, a club, a concert, there's always good, decent guys that are there. And you can't tell they're there because they're not making enough of a scene to be noticed.
Yep.
That 15%, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with talking to those guys or whatever, but as you go out and you start to look around, you'll be able to separate it as you see it. That I actually, as a DJ, being up in a booth in a club, can look down and see them. We have what we call the beehive in a club, and that's like a bunch of women who are kind of standing at the bar together, and their pocketbooks are all in the bar, and two women go dance and come back, and two women go to the bathroom and come back. And it's called the beehive. I don't know if you do that, Dave, but that's what we call that. Yeah. I'll see a guy actually come from one side of the bar and go right down the line. You can't see it because you're standing at ground level.
Right.
But these guys will ask every woman out one after the other.
Yep.
Until they get one that responds.
Yeah.
But when you're in the trenches, you can't see that happen because there's so much going on.
Right.
So I'm just telling you that most of these guys that you see work in the room, that's what they're going to be doing. And if you can try to notice that, it's hard because there's so much chaos in a club or something like that. But as you get used to it,
you start
If you
to
work
see
in
it.
300
So
clubs like I have, you can see it happening.
think of this, and I'm going to talk to the women out there for a minute because I hear this a lot. There's a good-looking guy sitting in the bar. He's over in the corner by himself. He becomes very interesting to a lot of the women because he's not trying to force himself on everybody. So they're curious as to what's up with this guy, right? So there's always that factor to keep in mind when you're out. And he just may not be the type of person that approaches people. And it doesn't mean he's a bad guy. It doesn't mean he's socially inept. It means that he's not there to try to make a mockery of what he's looking for. And that is very much how I think I get people's attention, is because I'm not looking for anything. I truly am not.
Right.
And
there are guys out there that, to be honest with you, in a lot of ways, those are typically the best guys because there's no angle. There's just like no angle going on. So you could just have a conversation with them and not be like trying to figure out. I will say that as a guy, if you approach women, and maybe when Dave tells you his side of it, it's going to be similar. I don't know. But women always have a wall that they put up. There's a specific wall. If you come at them and you're trying to get the phone number, trying to get the date and all that kind of stuff, I mean, women actually might get to know you and feel you out and like you. But because they have that wall up that you usually trigger with your behavior as a guy, they can't see through that wall to get any idea of what kind of person you are because they're on the defensive. There's like a defense wall. I don't know how to explain it, but there's a way that most guys will trigger that defense wall.
Right.
And now that it's up, it's going to be much harder for them they're just too busy trying to get you to back off.
Right.
And once that wall goes up and they're trying to get you to back off, you can't be known as a person. They cannot feel you out as an individual. It's not happening.
Right.
So the best way to do it is to, again, Dave will give you his side of it.
Yeah.
The best way to do it is not to trigger that. So I'm not done yet. I actually have to give women their steps. I'm sorry.
Yes, you gotta.
I gotta. Yeah. So I'm going to give you my 4 steps, and let's do this. There's going to be, there's a place where if you have any questions or anything, you can always message and ask.
Absolutely. Plenty of places.
But the one thing you want to do, the very first thing you want to do when you're out, let's say you're out, I'm going to give you a scenario. You're standing at the bar, you see this good looking guy or the guy that you find interesting for whatever reason, standing 50 feet away, let's say. So the first step, what you really want to do is, and he's looking at you and you're like, oh, he's really cute, whatever. Be conscious of yourself immediately and make sure that you keep eye contact with that guy. That's the very first thing. Because
not in a creepy way, though.
That's where I'm going with that.
Okay.
I would actually count. I would count to maybe 5 and stop because, of course, if you're trying to gauge it, you could go too far and become stalky looking. You don't want to do that.
Yep.
But you don't want to immediately break eye contact because there are a lot of guys that will assume that that's disinterest. And here's why. If you see a woman you like and you want to get to know her, Dave, you tell me if I'm wrong. You see a woman across the room, although you're Dave, so I don't know, you might not be the same as most guys when it comes to that kind of thing. But
certain things, I think.
You see a woman and she's good looking and she's cute and you're standing there and you're getting vibes off her and you're looking at her and she immediately turns her head and looks down or looks you're going to be like, oh, I don't know what that means.
Right.
I think it's going to put, now for Dave, he might not be swayed by something like that, but most guys are going to be like, that looks like not disinterest, especially if you don't smile or anything like that. And I know women tend to be unaware of these type of faces that we make. So if you see a guy and he's cute and he's looking at you, look back and hold your eye contact. And if you don't know what to do, count to 5. At that 5, make sure you smile before you look down. If you're going to break eye contact, at least smile at the guy first and then look down. That's something that just shows him interest. You know what I mean? That's sort of something that eye contact is a big deal. And if you break it, at least at the beginning, before you have any conversation, that's all you have to go with. So that's the reason I brought that up. Yep. Then I believe as a woman, you should approach. And I don't mean approach him, but just at least, I say close the gap.
Right.
So at least walk in their direction. And by the way, let me go back to one end and say, if he breaks eye contact with you, okay. You know what I mean? You don't have to go for that. If he's like whatever and he looks away, You can call that all right. I'll bench that.
You don't have to.
But if he's
though.
looking, you don't have to. But I'm saying,
because some people have insecurities and they struggle with eye contact.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right. Absolutely. So
I just think that, in my experience, women tend to break it quicker, and they tend to be insecure and look down quicker.
Right.
I don't know if it's that we're all taught to break eye contact with men in general, and so they're left to be a little more powerful with it than we are. I don't know. I'm sure they have insecurity, but I would say that a good 5-second look I like that. I think that's fair.
I agree. I think that's perfect. Yeah.
So yes, it's best done by you to approach, meaning you should walk in, you should close the gap a little bit to make sure that you guys are sort of in the same space.
Yeah. Oh, now closing the gap, you could simply walk past as well and give a glance on your way by.
Right.
That's closing the gap. You can go back to your original seat because you don't want to be bouncing tables and like moving closer and closer. The guy would be like,
no, I don't mean like that. I mean like
I know. Yeah.
Yes, you can have a focused goal, like I'm heading to the bathroom, I'm heading to the bar, something where you're just getting closer to him. You don't actually have to walk right at him.
Right.
But I'm saying just close the space a little bit. And
that tells us a lot. It does.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's best done. It's best done. Now, if the guy that you're trying to close the space with decides he's going to make the space bigger, that's probably a good reason to bench it.
Or he doesn't even notice that you're closing the gap. If he doesn't notice, he's not.
Well, obviously, if he's looking at you and you're closing the gap, he's noticing. This is what I'm saying.
He may
he's
realize
aware of it.
Yeah, he'll be aware that you're closing the gap. But if he's not interested, there's not going to be any. We'll get to that in a minute, I think, because when you're closing the gap with somebody, and somebody sees the gap closing, there's usually a positive thing that comes out of it somewhere, somehow. It could be a smile. It could be like they turn their head and they see you closer and they kind of be like, oh, there you are, whatever, something, right? There's going to be some sort of recognition of that gap closing. If they completely ignore that the gap is closing, they're probably not interested.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this week's podcast on the logic of social interaction. This is a 2-parter, so we'll be back next week with part 2. Stay with us and have a great week. Find us at www.lanaanddave.com or at Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at the @ Lana and Dave. That's LANAANDDAVE. Hey, you just listened to Love and Life with Lana and Dave. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share the podcast, leave us a comment or review, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new content. We'll see you soon.